Now, if you're an employer or even an employee, this one is for you. There's been an increase in the minimum wage for South Africans. The Department of Labour announced the amount will be hiked by 9.62%. That means that 3,700 pay will be increased to a little over 4,900 rand. We know the agriculture sector has slammed this increase, saying it could lead to job losses. Joining me now to discuss this further is Pinky Mashiane. She's from the United Domestic Workers of South Africa. And of course, South Pinky, for you, this comes as good news.
Good day to eNCA viewers. I can say we welcome the decision by the minister to include domestic workers in the national minimum wage of 25 rand 42 cents an hour. But we are having a but. Is it going to work for domestic workers? Because we still have domestic workers who are underpaid all these years. They are still underpaid domestic workers, and nothing is happening. The employers are continuing to as if nothing is happening. Economy is affecting domestic workers. Everything goes up. And when employers think of their expenditure, they just think of reducing hours of domestic workers or reducing salaries of domestic workers. So it will be good for underpaid domestic workers, but if it's implemented and enforced.
And I mean, looking at how tough things have been economically in our country, do you blame those such as the agriculture sector that say they simply will not be able to afford this?
Partly, but really, I will blame the government. Our government is not doing enough to protect other workers' jobs, more especially domestic workers, even our rights. So it's a difficult situation. If the government can do something about what's happening, about load shedding, about everything, if the economic at least can be boost up, maybe something better will happen. Because there are domestic workers during the 4 hours of load shedding, they are told that you are not working for 4 hours because the machine cannot work during that time. We cannot do the ironing during that time. Then that 4 hours will be deducted from the underpaid salary of the domestic worker. It's really sad.
And I mean, you speak about government not protecting your rights as domestic workers. You know, this is a discussion I was having with one of my colleagues yesterday that, you know, with some domestic workers, access to information is also quite a painful task, and they don't know that, you know, their basic salary now goes to just over 25 rand an hour. But besides that, how does a domestic worker fight their employer? Because it's such an informal employment. They could, you know, they could be fired for just raising that they need to be paid fairly.
They have been fired. There are domestic workers who were dismissed by employers just by simply asking for a raise, saying that the taxis have increased, the taxi fares, the buses have increased, and everything has gone up, even the groceries. Can I get an increase? Just for asking that, instead of the employer saying, I cannot afford maybe due to this and that and that, then they'll say, Pinky, pack your bags and go because you now want more money. I don't have more money for you. Because many employers are doing as they please. And I must also say that it's not that all employers cannot afford to pay the minimum wage. It's just that there are those employers who are just enjoying to enslave the domestic workers and see them just going down in poverty. That's what they enjoy. That domestic workers are dependent on them. They can't do anything for themselves. They are poor. They are slaves to them.
All right, just very quickly and lastly, you are outside court this morning for Mama Kabonina Mkanza. She's that woman who was beaten up, a 64-year-old woman then, who was beaten up by her then 28-year-old son of her employer, Christian Miller. It's a 2020 case, which means it's about 3 years old right now. Are we seeing finality in the case? Do we see sentencing happening today?
Yes, actually, I'm a bit happy because the court has already found Muller guilty. The magistrate is about to sentence him. As I'm taking this interview, I'll be rushing back to hear what's the sentence. But I'm also not a bit happy by the way the state has presented this case. It was not putting a nail. It's as if the magistrate is gonna just give him a slap on the wrist because of how the prosecutor was arguing in his last arguments, really. But we'll just hear, you'll see.
Yeah.
And also, one important thing, we have people from the Department of Labor, we have labor officials there, Advocate Chris Msibi is here, and Musandlovu, they are here because Mamam Konza was injured on duty, and the employer was not complying with the UIF. He even refused to honor the CCMA arbitration award. So they are here today to subpoena the employer right here at the magistrate court. They have already spoken with the defense, the representative of the employer.
Just very quickly, Pinky, and very, very quickly, my last question to you. You know, in terms of him being found guilty, I know that the state wanted him to also be found guilty of this being an apparent racial attack as well. So what exactly has he been found guilty of? Is it just the assault on Mam Konza, or both the assault and the alleged, racial attack?
He is found guilty of assaulting Mamam Konza. With the racial, we are still going to Equality Court because we approached Equality Court in Joburg. We were told that we must wait for the magistrate court before. We are still going to take them further. The Lord is still coming to them.
All right. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us here on eNCA. Pinky Mashiane. She's from the United Domestic Workers of South Africa.